Hi, welcome to another episode of The Communicative Leader. I'm your host, Dr. Leah O. Today we're focusing on how leaders translate that internal purpose into real, measurable results. And we're doing that by talking about building communication systems that actually work. In a world where we demand more from our leaders than ever before, the greatest challenge isn't navigating a complex strategy. My friends, it is ensuring that that strategy is communicated with clarity and structure needed to drive action and to sustain success. Today, Andrew Oxley is joining us. He is a nationally recognized author, speaker, and executive coach, and also the founder of the Oxley Group. Andrew helps leaders navigate complex challenges while driving real results, and he's worked with powerhouse organizations. We're talking Coca-Cola, CNN, Turner Broadcasting. Andrew's work is all about going beyond managing day-to-day complexities to really looking at how do you unlock your potential. He's developed a 5-step framework that helps executive teams transform their communication and leadership practices. And it is practical, my friends. It's going to help you focus on creating clarity, fostering trust, and building systems that will actually scale. In today's episode, we're going to dive into his 5-step framework and discuss how to move past confusion and misalignment so that you're leading with strategic intent. Let's dive in and have some fun. Hello, and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. So, Andrew, thank you for joining us on The Communicative Leader, and I'm really excited to learn more about you and your work. And I know that your work helps executive teams. You're driving real results by transforming their communication. So in your experience, I mean, you've worked with companies like CNN and Coca-Cola. What is the single greatest, if you had to put your finger on it, what is the greatest communication failure that you observe when a successful strategy, it starts to stall or it can't scale? What is that cost then that's related to these communication failures?
Yeah, it's so funny because you're absolutely right. Communication is the key to leadership. And when we say leadership, we don't just mean you're leading like necessarily employees. You lead in your personal life.
Yeah.
If you're seeking to influence another person, of course, you're a leader. So, clarity is the key. And, I go into organizations and they'll say, yeah, we're perfectly clear about what our objectives are, what our goals are, what our strategy is. And I'll go ask like 5-10 people and they're like, we have no idea. Absolutely no idea. And I think part of the problem is, well, actually, let me back up. What they typically say is not just that they have no idea. It said it depends on the day. Because what happens for most employees, and some of your listeners probably can identify with this, is that what becomes the most important issue is the last thing they received an email about. And sometimes that is not related to what their boss perhaps would really like them to be investing time on. So I see this being a massive problem that we think we're told more communication is better, right? Which is true if it's well designed. The problem is it's not normally well designed. It's very diffuse. And so we're peppering people with issues. And they're just thoroughly confused after a little while. They're just doing the best that they can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it becomes a lot of triage rather than that working towards that large overarching goal.
Yeah. We have this little test that we ask leaders. I said, do you ever hear from your people? I'll do my best when you ask them to do something. And I'm like, they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you know what that means, right? That means they've given up. Emotionally, they've given up because they know they can't ever meet the expectations that you have for them. So they're just going to do the best that they can, which means that the marginal effort that they could put forth is not going to probably be there. So I'll do my best should make your spine curl as a leader when people say that. It's like, ooh, wait a minute.
Yeah. It's the white flag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Gosh, well, Andrew, let's talk about your purpose-driven system and the work that you do. You help leaders move beyond just managing this complexity, which
Yes.
is a lot of a titled leader's job, really, but you help them to unlock their full potential. So I was
Yeah.
hoping you could help us understand, like, how do you define purpose and potential? And, what does that framework look like to helping these people kind of get unstuck and be able to thrive then?
Yeah, and this came from a question I was asked actually at some work I was doing down in
Mhm.
Atlanta many, many years ago. And the
Mhm.
wonderful thing, I'm sure it's true for you as well.
Mhm.
I get asked questions all the time, and
Mhm.
I'll always have an answer, but sometimes I'm left with a feeling like that
Mhm.
wasn't a great answer. I mean, it was an
Mhm.
answer, but it wasn't
Yep.
a great answer. And this
Mhm.
particular manager said to me, "What happens if you've lost your passion?" And
Mhm.
this happens to a lot of people in the midpoint of their
Mhm.
career. They're just like,
Yeah.
wow, is this all there is? And I hit that.
Mhm.
I was very, very lucky to hit that point very early in my career,
Mhm.
and what I affectionately refer to as my midlife crisis at 28, which I'm hoping
Yeah.
was not the actual midpoint of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is that all there is just
Mhm.
coming in and slogging every single day?
Yeah.
And I gave him an answer, but I got thinking about it. I got thinking, you know
Mhm.
what? It wasn't a great answer. So I went back and as
Mhm.
I always do, and I kept thinking about that. Okay, so what is it that differentiates great leaders from mediocre leaders or good leaders?
Mhm.
And I think it has to do with the passion they bring to their
Mhm.
work. I mean, you cannot get someone to have passion if you don't have passion.
Yeah.
You can't fabricate passion. You can fake it for a little
Mhm.
while, but you can't
Yep.
fabricate it.
Yep.
So the question I always ask leaders is, what are you passionate about? And they're like, I don't
Mhm.
know. I'm like, well, that's a
Mhm.
problem, right? So
Yep.
I take them through a little exercise, and just a couple of quick questions. I'll say, when were you the most passionate in your life? And they're like, well, what do you
Mhm.
mean? I'm like, well, when did you feel the most alive? And they're like,
Mhm.
when do you tell stories about? And you know what people tell stories about? High school, college, first job,
Mm.
promotion, when they got married, when they had
Yep.
kids, when they
Yep.
got their first you know what all these things
Mhm.
have in common? They were not that, you know, they were not that comfortable when we were going through them. They
Yeah.
were highly
It's a good
uncomfortable.
point. Yeah.
Growth only happens when we're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now it's like anybody who's got older kids, and
Mhm.
somebody's having their first child. They're like, oh, just enjoy it. Well, it's hard to enjoy it when you're in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, but we those are the times we
Mhm.
look back on. So stitching this together, what we always tell
Mhm.
leaders is growth, although
Mhm.
uncomfortable, is what spurs passion. So where
Mhm.
are you growing?
Mm.
Because when you're not passionate, it's because you're not growing anywhere. There's no growth. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, as adults, we like to pursue comfort. We don't
Mhm.
want to be uncomfortable. We want to be
Mhm.
comfortable. But
Yep.
when you become comfortable, you're not growing. And when you're not growing, all the passion
Mhm.
goes out of your life. And so
Yeah.
I'm not saying go throw everything out in your life and get new stuff. That's not
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
point is, where are you growing? Are you growing at work? Are you growing at, in your relationships? Are you growing
Mhm.
in the hobbies that you
Mhm.
have? It doesn't have to be everywhere, but it has to be
Mhm.
somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so insightful, and you're right, and I think for so many adults, it's like, "Well, I've grown up. I get to be comfortable now," but that comes at a cost many times. And the other thing I was thinking when you were talking about the leader without passion, we might be able to fake it for a moment, but we can't inspire others. And I think even worse, we can actually actively drain others of their
Yeah.
passion
Yeah.
when we are just showing up and slogging through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And people, you can't fake it. Like we talk about being an
Hmm.
authentic leader. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
authenticity, it can't be faked.
Yep. Exactly.
I love. I don't know if you remember the show Growing Pains. Michael J. Fox was
Yeah.
young,
Yep.
and he's in this interview. I can't remember if it was Stanford or Harvard or
Hmm.
somewhere, and they said you seem like a very authentic young man. And he said I've tried to
Hmm.
put a lot of authenticity into my answers, and
Mm.
and of course
Yeah.
you can't put authenticity.
Yeah.
Either it's there or it's not there,
Yep.
right? So,
Uh,
every leader's got what we call a leadership DNA. They have a DNA of their
mhm.
leadership style. So, trying to copy another leader is a false sort of
Mhm.
objective. But what we can do is I
Yes.
can look at
Yep.
a leader and say, I really admire that about them, and I
Yep.
feel like that resonates with me, and I admire this about this leader. And you weave that together into a
Mhm.
tapestry of who you can be authentically
Mhm.
as a leader. But you can't copy someone else, and when you try to copy someone else,
Mhm.
it just doesn't come off right.
Exactly. Because it's a performance rather
It is.
than you as a person. So, Andrew, let's talk about your program, The Four Faces of Frustration. I'm
Yeah.
so interested in this. And I know it speaks to a leader's internal state that
Yeah.
can ultimately derail that execution. So, from a communicative perspective, how does that unchecked internal frustration, those feelings of being overwhelmed, the challenges your audience faces, how does that then all of a sudden become externalized and derail your messaging, send those mixed messages, and break down team trust? Can you kind of show us how those are linked?
Yeah, there's a famous study, psychological
Mm-hmm.
study that was done. It's about left-hand columns and right-hand columns. And, left-hand columns are the things we say, and the right-hand columns are things we think, but we don't say. And what we know is that all emotion, that which is not expressed is impressed through our actions, right? So if
Yeah.
we don't talk it out, we act it out. And some people are easier at hiding their emotions in the short term, but then eventually it just comes out. But some people aren't even good at hiding them in the short term, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that leaders need to recognize is if they are frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, my wife asked me, she said, "Why are you so angry?" And I remember getting angry that she thought I was angry.
Yep.
And she's like, you realize what you're doing right
Yeah.
now, right? And I was
Yep.
like, oh man. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to recognize that there are like little red flags that I throw off when I'm
Mm-hmm.
angry, and I don't necessarily pick up on them, but other people might. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we respond when we're stressed and frustrated, first of all, as leaders? And so
Mm-hmm.
we say there are four sort of atypical ways or typical ways that people respond. And the first one is anger. You probably know people like this, that it's never fast enough. It's never good enough. When they want something, it's
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, and they're good people. And in fairness, they're
Yep.
not really angry. They're passionate. Their passion overflows
Mm-hmm.
in,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of urgency and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yep.
But it does come across as anger to other people. And it
Mm-hmm.
tends to shut people down from an engagement standpoint. So that's the first one. The second one is the optimist. Now they get angry too, but they transition through anger into their face of frustration, which is optimism. So they get actually
Oh.
frustrated with you, angry with you, but then they feel bad that they did. And so they start telling you everything's going to be okay. Don't worry. And I didn't really mean what I said. So
Okay.
so the person's left with
Yeah.
confusion of like, well,
Mm-hmm.
you said this, but now you're saying you didn't mean it, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that's the optimist. And with the angry people, we use the red face. It's the angry
Yeah.
face. The
Yep.
optimists, we use
Mm-hmm.
the yellow face, which is the color of the sun. They've
Mm-hmm.
never met a problem they can't put lipstick on and tell you it's a good thing.
Yep.
So the third one is very hard to discern, actually, and it's the biggest group in society. So if you don't understand this group, you're going to miss a huge chunk. This group are what we call the greens, or the no emotion people. So
Oh.
when they get
Yeah.
frustrated, they stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is confusing as heck to the other three sort of communication styles, because they're like, what?
Yeah.
Everything must be fine. They're not talking. No, they're
Yeah.
actually plotting your demise.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
they are thinking, surely they know I'm not okay with what's happening, and they're processing internally. So we use the green face, because this is the greens are after peace and tranquility. They'll almost do anything to keep peace and tranquility.
Yep.
If you have very long-term employees, there's a high degree of likelihood they are greens,
Yep.
because greens are very loyal.
Okay.
So and then the final one is the blue face, and we use blue because it's the color of the deep blue ocean. And these people are so hard to read, but they start asking questions when they're frustrated, and they start come across as the pessimist.
Okay.
So first of all, as a leader or as a communicator, you have to understand what happens to me when I get frustrated, and how am I coming across to other people. Years ago, I had a leader say to me, he said, "What's it like to be on the other side of you?" So think about, what's it like to be on the other side of you? Because it's hard to see yourself from another perspective.
Yeah.
And because I'm like a jokester, I said, "Well, it's wonderful."
Yeah.
And he said,
Yeah. Sunshine, roses.
He said, "I know you think it is."
Yeah.
No.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
like,
anyway, so
okay,
that's what I
let's
would
think
say.
about this.
You have to understand how you come across to people
Yeah.
when you're frustrated, first of all, and
Mm.
self-awareness precedes change. And
Yeah.
most of us are not very self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to know, well, like, which one do I come across as? Now, the interesting thing about this is if you go home and ask someone who knows
Mm-hmm.
you well, they
Yeah.
know. They
Oh, yeah.
know. They know what happens when you get frustrated. Not
Mm-hmm.
angry, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody gets angry, but
Yeah.
when the anger sort of cools off, do you stay hot, or do you start sort of trying to gloss over everything and make it seem like everything's fine, or do you get
Yeah.
quiet, or do you start
Mm-hmm.
asking kinds of questions?
Yeah. Yeah. That is really helpful and really a nice system for people to start to understand those they're interacting with, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think this is a nice segue. I was, you work, a lot of your work is all about trust and emphasizing trust. And so, Andrew, I'm wondering, in these high stakes, these fast moving corporate environments, what specific communication behaviors should a leader adopt to establish? You talk about this predictable clarity, which I love. So, what are those communication behaviors that leaders can do in order to foster this predictable, trusting environment?
Yeah, and I guess the first thing you have to ask is, or you have to recognize is, everybody thinks they're trustworthy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet we know we don't trust everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
this is not necessarily a judgment of character. This is
Mm-hmm.
a judgment of perception, perhaps, or
Mm-hmm.
reality, but it's somebody else's perception of reality, not necessarily what we feel. I
Yeah.
know when I make mistakes, and I have excellent reasons for my mistakes. So,
Yes.
um,
Right. Yeah.
and I
Me
think it
too.
should not.
Weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but when other people make mistakes, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know, I knew it. That was
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm.
So trust is not a black and white issue. It's not a you
Yeah.
trust someone or you don't trust them. I could trust you with, my phone,
Mm-hmm.
but I might not trust you with my wife. I
Mm-hmm.
might trust you
Yeah.
with. I have a client actually who he says I trust him with $1 million, but I wouldn't trust him with a secret. You
Mm.
know, because he
Mhm.
loves to talk to people,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But I trust him with $1 million. So the
Yep.
question is not, do you trust people or do your people
Mhm.
trust you? It's like, what is the trust? And in an organization, the trust you need most is you need the trust where people will speak truth, be
Mhm.
candid without fear of retribution. And
Yeah.
as leaders, it's hard to get people to be truthful with us.
Yeah. Yep.
Because there's this, I always say when the leader walks in the room, the room shifts.
Mhm.
And I have leaders say, no, my people love me. They trust me. They don't change when I'm around. I'm like, yeah, they do. They do.
Mhm.
And the
Yep.
higher up you go in an organization, the more the room shifts when you walk in.
Yes. Yep.
So
Exactly.
trust is something that you can't manufacture. You
Mhm.
have to actually look at it and say, okay, so if nobody ever tells me what I'm doing
Mhm.
wrong, or if I ask for advice, insight, what could I do, and nobody
Mhm.
will tell me, they don't trust me.
Mhm. Yep.
Because I'm probably not that good.
Yeah.
There's probably
Yeah.
something to improve on.
Yeah. Those are really, really important insights. Hard insights, but really essential ones.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's dive more into another one of your frameworks, the 5-step framework. And this is a core methodology. And I
Hmm.
was hoping you could just start us off with that first critical step. So we have leaders out there, they're feeling overwhelmed. What is this initial phase and, this idea of decluttering their message and transitioning from reactive to proactive? Can you help us kind of understand that and walk us through it?
Yeah. And we touched on a minute ago about passion,
Mhm.
but the first step is
Mhm.
vision. What
Mhm.
are you trying to create? And I work with leaders all the time, and they're like, well, the vision of our organization is. And I'm like, I don't care about that.
Mhm.
They're like, well, but that's the vision. I'm like, well, yeah, I get it. But if you
Mhm.
work six layers down in an organization, that vision is relevant directionally, but not relevant personally for your team,
Mm.
probably.
Yeah, that's a
And
great way of
so
saying that.
you've got to ask yourself, well, if you go back to the question of passion, what
Yeah.
is it what is the wrong we're trying to right in our group? What's the thing that would be an ideal we could strive for that would align with the vision of the organization, but it's probably not like going to encompass all of it, right? So I was working with a customer service group years ago, and they had this vision. The vision originally was to be the highest quality customer service group and serve people and make ecstatic customers. And I'm like, so my question for the person, it was about a 300 person team. My question for the director is, are your people passionate about that? He said, well, I'm sure they want to make it happen. I said, but are they passionate about it? Because I'm asking, what's in it for them? Like what? Well, they get to keep their job. That is not inspirational to anybody, right? So I said, well, what do they want? He said, well, I think what they want is to grow, and they want to get new skills and be more employable. I said, well, let's write the vision around that. And that if we do that, we'll have high quality employees who will get great customer service. And so we started with that vision, and that vision then meant, okay, so if that's what we're trying to create, what do we need to do differently in the organization? Because having a vision that is detached from what's happening like every day is irrelevant. And I love Andy Stanley has this great saying. He says, what happens down the hall will beat what's hanging on the wall. So you can hang the vision on the wall, but what's happening every day, if that's our vision, what do we need to, how does that inform our strategy and how our values and what we should be doing differently as an organization? It starts with that. So as a leader, you have to ask yourself, what am I passionate about? What's the right, what's the wrong that we could, the ideal. And by the way, this is not a goal. This is not something you can ever achieve. I mean, think about creating, a growth-oriented organization, because what happens as soon as you do that, people leave. Right. So you're constantly working on this. So a vision is an ideal that is hard to realize, that allows you to set goals. Goals are the milestones on the way to ideals.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm very visual, so I can keep seeing how this scaffolds on one another. And I love that idea too, of when we're getting clear on that vision and kind of stripping it away from that beautiful wordsmith item that we have on our website and all of our social media, but bringing in the people, right? Because so many organizations are guilty. Everything is external. It's all about the stakeholders. And certainly we need that. I understand profit and return on investment, but without good people who aren't passionate, people who are just there for that paycheck, like you're going to be running for a long time, buddy, to try and meet that goal that you set, because it's going to be just about impossible.
Yeah. And the great thing about this is that, leaders complain to me all the time, but young people today, it's not usually said in a glowing way. Right. And I'm like, you know what? First of all, I think every generation has complained about young people today. Now, there's some unique things about this generation, without question, many of which are great and really positive if you look for them. But here's the problem with that. Young people today will work harder for a mission than they will a paycheck. So as a leader, this is not a nice to have. This, if you want to engage people and they complain, well, they're just not that motivated. I'm like, well, why should they be? They're like, well, it's their job. I'm like, you do realize how bad that sounds. And it might have been okay for you and me when we were starting, but I don't think it's unhealthy for people to be asking, but what does it matter? Because when we hit this goal, aren't we just going to set a bigger goal? So it's just a shell game, right? You're just, no matter how hard I work, you're always going to want more. So I'll just do my best. I'll try.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really insightful to bring that in and to be thinking about those differences. And that kind of brings us to scale. And I know that your work, it focuses on building systems that actually scale. And this is so essential, because so many people can kind of come in and do Band-Aids, but when we're trying to grow, it falls apart. So when a leader is communicating change or a new initiative, how should their messaging shift from that one-on-one or those like small team department specifics to being system proof, meaning it holds up and it remains clear as it kind of cascades across departments and maybe even geographies?
Right. And we one of the things we work with with our clients is what we call cascading messages. So no more than 3. Most people can't remember more than 3 things at a time. There's a reason why, if you look at the great communicators, they usually communicated in 3s. 1 would be better, by the way, but 3 is probably practical, right? 3 things. When we talk about values of an organization, we like them not to have more than 3, because usually you can nest stuff underneath other ones anyway. So first of all, complexity is easy. Simplicity is hard. When I'm communicating one-on-one with a person, I can see whether I'm connecting. But when I'm communicating to many people, I can't. And I had this experience the first time when I speak to a lot of different audiences, but typically I used to speak to audiences of about 100 to 200. And then this one time I got on stage and it was a big audience. It was almost 1,000 people. And there was TV cameras and there was lights in my face and I couldn't see the audience. And it was the first time I was like, I can't see whether I'm connecting. I could hear them, but I couldn't see whether I was emotionally moving them. And so as leaders, that's the visual you need to have, is I need to be so clear in my message that, and it needs to be so simple, which takes time, right? That I know that I've had clarity. I did a message one time. It was about 12 minutes. And somebody asked me, they said, how long did you practice? And I said, 3 days. And they're like, 3 days? I'm like, Steve Jobs, probably one of them. He used to practice 60 minutes for every minute he was on stage. Now just think about that. That is not what we do as leaders, right? We pop up and we're like, I can talk and I can. Well, you probably can, but you're not going to be clear. You'll move people emotionally, and they won't have clarity about what they're supposed to do when they leave. So you start with, what do I want people to take away from this? What are the actions I want? And how do I only talk about those 3 things at max? I can give examples, but I'm only really talking about 3 things. And that's not what we do. I was working with a client years ago, and I said, what is the one thing that needs to change? And they gave me a list of 20. And I'm like, okay, so what you have to understand about that, that's like playing whack-a-mole at the fair. Your people are just going to be trying to, what is the one thing you want to change? And they're like, but it all has to change. I'm like, if you can't change 1, 20 won't change. So let's start with 1. Let's get momentum. And then we can start focusing on other things. So it's that simplicity and clarity and focus. It's, by the way, it's not that it's not important one-on-one, but when you get to a group, you'll lose people so fast. And just, so if you're a leader and you give a message to a group, go out and ask people, what did you take from what I just said? And you'll hear 50 different messages from people. Well, that wasn't a clear, and as leaders would say, well, it's their fault. They weren't listening. I'm like, no, that's your fault. They're not listening. That's your fault.
And I love to, I even wrote it down, that idea that simplicity takes time, because I think that's counterintuitive, right? It should be like, oh, no, this is easy. Give me the stage, give me the boardroom, and I can talk about this. But until you can, like you said, distill that down, and that takes time. That takes mental clarity. It takes the lift to figure out, what do I strip away? What do they need to know? What's nice to have? So I really appreciate you acknowledging that, because I think that really gets overlooked, the amount of effort that goes into that process.
Yeah, lots of effort. I don't know if it was Mark Twain said, if I'd had more time, I would have written a shorter letter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Long is easy.
Exactly. Yes. So, Andrew, let's talk about this leadership and how we sustain it. So you developed the leadership program, and what you've seen and what we've probably experienced or seen others do, they have these exciting bursts of clarity. But then it can be hard. We can struggle with sustaining these new habits. So how does your framework, how does it build in communication resilience into that system, so that leaders can kind of stay rooted in that purpose-driven clarity rather than kind of backsliding into that complexity and confusion?
Yeah, I think we've we've bought into this notion that you can microwave leadership. You can go send someone off to a 2-day program, a 3-day program, and they're going to come back and they will be energized when they come back. They'll have all sorts of ideas. The problem is they're going to take the book and they're going to put it on the shelf or put it over here because they've got all this stuff to do because they've been gone for 3 days. And then 3 months later, they're going to find the book and they're going to go, I had all this ideas. I'll get to it when I have time. So what we do is a little bit different. And this comes from the fact I'm not from a training and development background. I was an operational leader before I started this company. And so what we said, well, what's the impediment to change for most people? And it's habits. It's the habits they have, right? Habits die hard and they are hard to change, right? So when you pack someone into a room for 3 days, it might not be very expensive relatively, but you're presuming that the problem is knowledge, that they just don't know what to do. I have found that it rarely is knowledge. Sometimes, but rarely. It's usually application. How do I actually do that? So what we do is we take the content and we divide it up over 9 modules. And every 2 weeks, we meet with the client and we talk about what's working and what's not working. What did they do with the material? Did they do anything with it? These are little bite-sized chunks that are well designed to take it through this thing. And so, there's accountability for change, there's support for change, and there's clarity of what they're supposed to be changing because their boss and them have to agree on what success looks like when they come out of the program. So we don't pretend you can microwave it. We believe you got to slow it.
Yeah, I love those metaphors. And you're right, because it is that accountability, the support and clarity that really provide kind of those guardrails to keep you going in that direction that you want to be in.
Right. Absolutely. Without question.
Yeah. So, Andrew, now, and this is something that, in my work as a leadership communication, especially as a professor and scholar, this myth of practical versus soft. So I know that shifting executive teams' communications habit that can face internal pushback. Some people will say it's taking away from quote unquote real work. So how do you help, those leaders who are saying, no, we really need to get clear in our communication. So how do we help them then articulate this immediate tangible ROI of investing in communication clarity and trust building to those who are skeptical?
Yeah, and we do things a little bit differently because the problem is that most leaders do look at any kind of training, leadership training, communication training, and leadership is all about communication as soft skills. So dismissive,
right? Yep.
So, and then what they do is they put the HR group in charge of it, which is an untenable position for the HR team because they cannot drive that program. All they can do is hope that people come in. And if an operational leader has to choose between what's happening in the operation and what's happening for this, he's going to choose this over here. He's going to say, I don't have time for that. I've got to work on this over here. So we start with a different methodology. We start with what the business problem is. Like, what's the business problem you're trying to solve? So years ago, we had a client, Progressive Insurance. They wanted to do some leadership skills training. And I said, why? And they're like, because our leaders need to grow. I'm like, why? I said, because the organization's growing so fast, we're having to promote people. I said, well, what's that creating? And after we asked why about 7 times, we identified that there were some metrics that were not where they needed to be. And Progressive measures more stuff than NASA. I mean, they measure everything. And so I took a long time to get them to choose one metric. And I said, and it would end up being timeliness in this particular case. And I said, okay, so if your leader is more effective, this would be happening, this would be happening, this would be happening, and your timeliness metric would improve. And they were like, yeah. I said, well, let's measure the timeliness metric as we implement the leadership development process. And I said, it should improve. But let's make sure everybody knows that the purpose of this program is not to make them kinder, gentler leaders. It's to improve this timeliness metric, which we will expect will happen when they get different skills. So what we do is we start with the business problem, and we make it, by doing so, we make it an operational problem or an operational program, not an HR program.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, kudos to you. That is so strategic and forward thinking. And that's the way that we get habits, right? Because they recognize this is tied to metrics for their job. They're building it in. And then you have those other supports we've talked about with the accountability and the clarity. So I really, really appreciate that approach that you and your organization are taking. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's worked well for us, and I think what
Yeah.
happens is operational leaders, we partner with HR groups.
Yeah.
And we love our HR
Hmm.
partners, but
Hmm.
I always say, no, do not delegate the implementation of this to the HR team. You are putting
Hmm.
them in an untenable position of being
Yeah.
responsible for something that they cannot be responsible for.
Hmm.
This must be an operational initiative which they can support you in.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what that communicates to the employees. This
Yeah,
is really important. This is essential. This is foundational for our work. Not, oh, this is nice to have, or this is another training to check off that list of many trainings and compliance, initiatives that we have to do.
yeah. So we have this little trick we do
Hmm.
when someone has to miss one of our sessions. We
Hmm.
say, you can miss. And if it's
Hmm.
vacation, that's fine. If pre-planned
Yep.
vacation, that's fine.
Yep.
But if you're missing because there's an operational need, you
Mm-hmm.
must clear it with your boss's boss, not
Oh,
your boss.
okay. Yeah,
Your boss will
exactly.
probably say
Yep.
yes, but your
Yep.
boss's boss has a longer view, and they're like, no, 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 no.
No. Yep. We need you here.
You need to
Yeah.
invest the time.
Yep.
And you know what? Since we initiated that, hardly
Mm-hmm.
anyone ever misses a session because they do
Yep.
not want to go to their boss's boss and ask that question.
Yeah.
They know what
Yep.
the answer is going to be.
Exactly. Exactly. And just that messaging of like, this is important. We care about this development. We care about your ability to do this well.
Yeah,
What a gift to give people,
yeah,
right? I mean, once your communication improves and you can speak to each audience in a way they understand, like problems just disappear in all areas of your life, or they become manageable because they don't all
yeah.
disappear, but right. So Andrew, I have two final questions for you, and these go hand in hand. It's the way we end all episodes of the Communicative Leader. And so it's kind of looking for leadership or leadership communication advice, tip, challenge. The first part is for our titled leaders, our managers, our directors. And then the second part is our employees of all ranks. So what do you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that I would
Mm-hmm.
say is for your people who are actually in leadership
Mm-hmm.
authority positions
Mm-hmm.
is find people who will speak the truth to you, who will be candid with
Mm-hmm.
you. Go find people who see the world differently than you do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go find somebody who sees the world the way that you do. And you're like, I'm having trouble with Mary. And they're like, yeah, me too. Mary she's not
Mm-hmm.
engaged. She's not motivated. They can't
Yeah.
help you.
Mm-hmm.
Go find somebody who sees the world differently and challenges you,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're challenged, then you are not going to be comfortable. It's going to force you to grow.
Mm-hmm.
We call what often leaders do is they seek the cold comfort of validation.
Yeah.
They get
Yep.
validated. If
Mhm.
all you get is validation,
Mhm.
you're comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're
Yep.
not.
Mhm. Yeah. And then what about our employees, all ranks across all industries? What do you want to leave them with?
Yeah, it's a slightly different variation of what I
Mhm.
just told the leaders, and that is, and this was something that was told to me by one of my
Mhm.
mentors early in life. He
Mhm.
said that to me that the amount of progress you make in your life will be directly proportional to the amount of honesty you can accept about yourself.
Mhm.
The amount of progress you make in your life will be
Mhm.
directly proportional to the amount of honesty you can accept about yourself. He went on to say that he did not think I was into honesty. And I was like, well, that's hurtful. And he's like, see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, on,
Mhm.
the truth of the matter is that
Mhm.
you can never change another person
Mhm.
directly. You can never change your circumstances directly. It's an inside job. You've got to work on
Mhm.
yourself. When you can, that doesn't mean that other people don't need to change and that you don't need to
Yeah.
change but
Yeah.
you have to change you. You
Mhm.
must focus on the part of the problem that you have control or influence over
Mhm.
and be honest about what you need to do differently. And
Mhm.
any amount of energy you focus on the part of the problem that you have no control or influence over is not just wasted. It actually marginalizes every amount of energy you could be putting forth to what you could do differently. Because whatever you focus
Mhm.
on in your life gets bigger. If
Yeah.
you focus on the parts of the problem you can't do anything about, that's all you get.
Yeah.
And you're a victim. And when you're a victim, it's not a good place to live your life.
Exactly. And like you said earlier, it's that self-awareness precedes action.
Yes.
Right? So when we're starting there, then at least we know we're positioned to move in a way we want.
Right. Yeah.
Excellent. So, Andrew, I really enjoyed our conversation. I have so many notes here. I'm going to return to this. So, I thank you for sharing your time and expertise. And I know this is going to be really helpful for our listeners.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.